people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Jake Paul's MVP sign another British fighter. Most Valuable Promotions continues strengthening its boxing presence as they push for dominance in the sport. Their rapid rise in women's boxing has arguably put the promotional outfit ahead of many of their rivals. This week, MVP added to their growing roster by signing Britain's Tysie Gallagher, a fighter we've talked about a good number of occasions here on the channel. The 27-year-old British champion is currently the number 5 ranked IBF junior featherweight contender. Speaking on a new venture in the sport, Gallagher said, "Signing a multi-year deal with MVP is a huge moment in my career. I want to thank Nikisa Badarian, Jake Paul, Mike Leonardi for this opportunity. I'm excited to represent Britain on the global stage and become a world champion." The promotional outfit already has a strong stable of British fighters, including the likes of Caroline Dubois, Ellie Scottney, and Terry Harpier. They didn't mention Savannah Marshall. Is she not with them anymore? It seems like MVP, for the last year and a half, 2 years, has gone on a proverbial signing spree to where they're signing fighters left and right. Every other week or every other month, you're hearing about some female fighter that they picked up. But in order to run a soluble business, you have to shed the excess. You have to get rid of the dead weight. And I wonder if Savannah Marshall hasn't been jettisoned. Not only her, but Naomi Valle, the younger sister of Yokasta Valle. She lost in what was her MVP debut. More recently, not but a few weeks ago, Yokasta Valle herself suffered a loss to Lourdes Suarez in what was the light flyweight WBC title fight. You wonder, did they get rid of Naomi? Because she hasn't boxed under the banner since that loss. And are they going to get rid of Yokasta? For every fighter they sign, you have to wonder, what fighters have they gotten rid of? What did Most Valuable Promotions say about this recent signing of Tysie Gallagher? MVP co-founders Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian said in a joint statement, "Few fighters have done more to push British women's boxing forward than Tysie Gallagher. She is a fighter who has consistently proven herself against top competition and built one of the strongest resumes in the country. She has demonstrated the skill, toughness, and determination that embody everything MVP looks for in its athletes. As we continue to strengthen the MVPW global roster and deepen our roster within the super bantamweight division, we're excited to welcome another elite UK fighter and provide them a platform for Tysie to pursue her world title ambitions." Now, what's the probability of Tysie becoming IBF champion? Who would she have to go through? Not Ellie Scottney. She's moving up. So the way it is, Ellie Scottney recently became this division's inaugural undisputed champion, and as I predicted, she's not going to stay there. She's moving up to featherweight. As a result, all of the belts she held are now up for grabs, and a new cycle of champions is set to sprout. But is Tysie Gallagher one of those champions? They say she's ranked at number 5 via the IBF. So who's ranked ahead of her? Ranked ahead of Tysie Gallagher is former WBA champion of Mexico, Miguel Flores, who MVP also happened to pick up. There is also former champion of France, Sigolene Lafarve. She's ranked at number 3. Ramla Ali, yet another fighter that MVP picked up. She's ranked at number 2, and we haven't seen much of Ramla since she made her MVP debut. You also have to wonder about her. Is she still with the promotion? Ramla made her MVP debut all the way back there in July of the previous year, and she hasn't boxed under the promotional banner since then, though she has boxed. She was last in action earlier this year in February on what wasn't an MVP show. So you wonder, is she still with them? I don't know. Ranked ahead of all of them is the United States' own unbeaten up-and-comer Micaiah Krebs, who I've often described as a dark horse in this division, one of the best fighters that you probably haven't heard about and haven't seen. I would give Micaiah very good odds to beat any of these aforementioned girls, Tysie Gallagher included. The hope for them has got to be that Micaiah's after another belt. That way they ain't gotta deal with her. So how many of these aforementioned fighters can Tysie Gallagher actually beat? I don't think Tysie Gallagher can beat Miele Flores. Little bit on the fence as to whether or not she can beat Sigolene Lafarve or Ramla Ali, and I don't think she beats Micaiah Krebs. Nope. She doesn't beat her. So as stated, if Micaiah is in pursuit of a different belt, she may not be Tysie Gallagher's problem. So maybe it'll come down to Tysie Gallagher versus Ramla Ali for the vacant IBF title. What about Miele? Maybe Miele Flores is after a different belt too. Remember, all of Ellie Scottney's old belts are up for grabs now. And there has to be a reason they decided to pick up Tysie Gallagher and sign her to a multi-fight deal. Maybe they're anticipating doing a fight between her and Ramla for the vacant blue belt. Maybe they do that fight sometime later in the year, say in the fall or winter months. We'll see what happens, but that's the story. They've picked up Tysie Gallagher. In men's light heavyweight news, Artur Beterbiev says Beterbiev-Bivol trilogy comes before David Benavidez' fight. Artur Beterbiev has made his preference clear for his next fight, saying a trilogy bout with Dimitri takes priority over a showdown with David. The former undisputed light heavyweight champion remains focused on settling the score with Bivol after splitting their initial meetings. Of course, now that Dimitri Bivol is back and he's had a return fight against Michael Eifert, which he dominated, of course he's going to be the focus of Artur Beterbiev, which is why I told you. The time and the place to do the David Benavidez fight was while Dimitri was out, recovering from back surgery. But now that he's back, what do you think Artur is going to focus on? I really want the rubber match, said Beterbiev on DAZN's Inside the Ring. I think everyone wants the rubber match, and I feel good. If you want to check if I'm good or not, make this fight happen, and I'll show you. Beterbiev and Bivol are tied 1 victory apiece following their 2 undisputed title fights. Beterbiev insists he should be entering a third meeting with a 2-0 advantage. I believe I won the second fight better than the first one, Beterbiev said. For sure, the third fight is going to happen, and I'll do better than both of them. I don't agree with him on that. I think Dimitri made it more decisive in the second fight than he did in the first, and even in the first, there were a lot of people who scored it for him. The 41-year-old also suggested that Dimitri has not been eager to finalize a third fight despite widespread interest in the matchup. I'm expecting the third fight to happen in a minimum of 5 or 6 months, Beterbiev said, but he doesn't want to fight. Interest has continued to grow in a potential clash between Beterbiev and Benavidez, who recently became a 3-weight world champion by stopping Zurdo Ramirez to capture the WBA and WBO cruiserweight titles. Beterbiev said he remains open to facing Benavidez in the future, but only after completing unfinished business with Dimitri. If you remember the second fight and how it started, Artur Beterbiev got off to a very early start. He was trying to put away Dimitri Bivol early, very aggressive, perhaps a smidge more than usual, and as a result, it costed him in the middle and towards the end, because for the first time, you saw Artur Beterbiev get tired, winded in his corner, and breathing heavy. If you remember the first fight. Dimitri Bivol spent a little less time on his bike circling away from Artur and more time throwing combinations mid-range to inside, if you remember the first fight. Now, time doesn't really favor Artur Beterbiev, who's now 41, ahead of a third, and hasn't boxed in well over a year. He says that he's alright, but I think he'd be a lot better if he would have took a tune-up fight in between. It doesn't help his situation that in between his second fight with Dimitri Bivol and now, Dimitri's had a fight. He hasn't, and he's older. He broached the subject of a potential David Benavidez fight, and as stated, the moment is past. The time to do it would have been in between the time that Dimitri Bivol goes in for surgery, sits out recovering, and now. That moment is gone. Now that Dimitri's back, of course he's going to be the focus.
I never avoid some kind of fights like Benavidez or different fights. I respect what did Benavidez already in boxing, you know, and he become a 3-category in boxing champion, world champion. And it's not like I'm not avoiding this kind of fights with Benavidez or someone else. Doesn't matter. I don't care. There is who's in front of me after Nicholson.
Said after Nicholson. Are they gonna schedule this guy a tune-up fight with Damon Nicholson, who he was supposed to fight late last year? Did they adhere to my suggestion that since it's the IBA who wants to promote the third fight between Dimitri and Artur, what they can do for Artur is get him a tune-up fight on the undercard of the upcoming Yoka versus Garcia fight that they are also promoting. Get Artur a spot on that card against Damon Nicholson or somebody else, let him tune up, so he's ready for Dimitri in the fall or winter. No Benavidez, huh? No shit, Sherlock. I mean, it's been well over a week since the World Boxing Council ordered Noel Mikhailian to fight David Benavidez in a unification match, David being his mandatory, and it wasn't but 5 days ago that they were reported to be in deep negotiations to do the fight in the fall. David was never going to fight Artur. David was never going to move back down to light heavyweight. I can't stress that enough because so many of the journos are writing about this story as if that was ever a distinct possibility, that David was going to drop from cruiser back down to light heavy, which he just left. Wake up and smell the diuretics. Smell the sauna suit, because at this point, David Benavidez would have to cut off both his legs to get back down to light heavyweight. Why do you think he left that division in such a hurry after just 3 fights? I said it from the very beginning. 175 is not that far a cry from 168, especially for a guy who walks around at 200 plus. He's gonna be busting at the seams again before you know it, and his light heavyweight campaign won't last long. Which it didn't. The article is relatively new, as are the quotes from Artur Beterbiev, but not the story. And I've been telling you from the very, very beginning, David Benavidez's light heavyweight campaign will come and go without a fight against Artur and without a fight against Dimitri. Those two guys, they're gonna settle up with each other. David's in the wind. David is gone because he meant to be. He's fighting Noel Mikhailian. That is who him and his team petitioned to fight. That is who he's going to fight. And that's the way it is. The reality of things is often more mundane. The added excitement of believing that guys like Dimitri and Artur might be in the queue for David, even though David's got no track record of facing the best fighters at any of the weights he's campaigned. Now, for something else to dampen the Benavidez fans' spirits, he's rejecting the Usyk fight, saying that he's quote-unquote not ready for a heavyweight move. No surprises there. David Benavidez says a fight against the unified heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk is not something he's prepared to pursue right now, despite reported interest from Turki Al-Sheikh in making the matchup and interest from his own faction of fans hyping him up. I even saw Robert Garcia give David Benavidez good odds to beat Alexander Usyk, if you can believe that. Benavidez recently captured the WBA and WBO cruiserweight titles with a 6th-round stoppage of Zurdo Ramirez, becoming a 3-weight world champion. While some fans immediately began discussing a future move to heavyweight, Benavidez made it clear that he intends to remain at cruiser for the foreseeable future. He could stay at cruiser for a year, 2, 3 years, 4 years. He could stay at cruiser for the rest of his career. He's never gonna have what it takes to make it as a heavyweight. David's entire thing has been being bigger than the guys that he fights, most of the time. But he ain't gonna be bigger than nobody at heavyweight. Asked about the possibility of facing Usyk, Benavidez revealed that Turki Al-Sheikh could exploit the idea through members of his team. Al-Sheikh didn't talk to me directly, but he was talking to the people around me and said he wanted to make that fight, said Benavidez to Luis Barra. But honestly, I have a lot of respect for Usyk, and I'm not ready for that right now. If he came down to cruiser, then yeah, we could fight at cruiser, but I'm not moving up. These comments suggest Benavidez believes he still has work to do before considering a jump to heavyweight, even after an impressive debut at cruiser against Ramirez. Yeah, even if it was impressive, Zurdo Ramirez is a fighter who's fought as low as 168, 175. Beating him at cruiser doesn't communicate anything about what David would face as a heavyweight. Instead, Benavidez appears focused on unifying the cruiserweight division. He successfully petitioned the WBC to install him as mandatory challenger and is reportedly negotiating a 3-belt unification fight against WBC champion Noel Mikhailian. Usyk, meanwhile, has his own decisions to make. The WBC recently ordered him to defend his title against interim champion Agit Kabayel. If that fight don't happen, Usyk could be forced to vacate the title. Benavidez is staying in his lane at cruiser and leaving any talk of a showdown with Usyk for another day. A day that'll never come, because by the time David Benavidez gets up the courage to move up to the heavyweight division, if he ever does, by then, Usyk will be long gone. He'll be retired. You know, I don't even fault David Benavidez for this one, because he's not necessarily the one who said he wants to fight Usyk anytime in the near future. He's been saying the opposite. It's everybody else. Everybody trying to put a battery in his back. Everybody trying to hype him up. Especially now that Alexander Usyk has looked the most human that he's ever looked opposite the ring kickboxer Rico Verhoeven. He looked beatable. The most beatable that he's ever looked. So many are identifying now as the most opportune time for David Benavidez to face him, not realizing he wouldn't go into that fight with the advantages that Rico Verhoeven had. Rico was a fucking giant in there with Usyk. Never mind his lack of experience, because he compensated for that in sheer size. The man's about 6'5", 6'6", 240 something, 250. David Benavidez, for all of his weight bullying, doesn't have the frame to carry that same weight the same way that Rico did. Rico is a naturally bigger man than David. He's a naturally bigger man than Usyk, and his sheer size had a lot to do with how durable he was, how aggressive, how strong. David Benavidez moving up to heavyweight wouldn't have any of those advantages over Usyk, so it was always a somewhat silly conversation, David moving up there and David fighting Usyk. Everybody else wanted him to do it. Everybody but David himself. That's stupid. David's got a fight to sell in the fall. A fight with Noel Mikhailian that now looks a lot like it's going to be part of a bigger show. Part of a card. Initially, I thought they were going to try to bill it as a main event, which I thought isn't a good idea. Benavidez versus Noel Mikhailian as a main event on pay-per-view. Good luck selling that, because even less people know Noel than they knew Zurdo Ramirez, and that fight doesn't look like it did good numbers. So why would this one? What changed? Reports now indicate that Gervonta Davis is targeting his ring return for the fall, but not only that, he will now be trained by David Benavidez's father, Jose Benavidez, and it wouldn't be the first time that Gervonta and David boxed on the same show. You will remember that when David Benavidez made his light heavyweight debut, that was on the undercard of Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin. What, so they're gonna double book Jose Benavidez to be in the corner for both the co-main event and the main event? It's not the craziest thing I ever heard. We see Robert Garcia do it all the time. That guy doesn't take a day off, doesn't take a week. What are you talking about? It's not like he's the one that's gonna do the actual fighting. He'll just be in the corner. I could totally see Jose Benavidez cornering two fighters in both the co-main and the main. So we'll be busy for about an hour and a half. It all makes sense now. It never made sense to me trying to bill Benavidez versus Mikhailian as a main event, not by itself, but if it's a doubleheader on the undercard of Gervonta Davis's comeback fight, well, now it makes sense, because they've done that before. He's not going to make much. Not as much as he could make boxing Jai Opetaia in a main event, but at the same time, he's not risking as much either. Noel does not pose the risk to him that Jai would.